a few things with you. I'd like to talk a little bit about who Freshwater Future is. I'd like to talk about the grant types that are available. And there's a few different types. We'll dive into a few details. We'll spend a little bit more time on the Freshwater Future grants that are our fall project grants. So we'll talk a little bit more about eligibility, more about what it means to be a grassroots organization and advocacy, a little bit about the fall project application process and timeline and questions. And because it's not a real big group, I would like to try to, make it as informal and question and answer as we go as well. So I'll try to stop here and there so we can ask and answer questions. So just want to tell you a little bit more about Freshwater Future for those of you that may not be familiar with us. We are a binational organization. We work in all 8 of the Great Lakes states as well as in Canada. So we're a Canadian charity as well as a US nonprofit. Our mission is to be a catalyst for community action that strengthens policies designed to safeguard the waters of the Great Lakes region. But we really do that by helping community groups protect the resources in their backyard. It's all of you who are on the phone right now. You know your resources the best. You know your rivers, your lakes, your streams, your wetlands, your shoreline, your drinking water. You know the people in your community. You know who's vulnerable, who isn't. You are the ones that know what's best. And so our work is always designed to help community. It's to support what you need to do to protect your resources and make sure people have access to safe drinking water. We do that in a variety of different ways. We offer grants, which we're going to focus on today, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. We also do a lot of capacity building, helping organizations be stronger. So whether that means you want to get your nonprofit status and you need help with that, it might be doing some planning activities. It might be just some help with the issue work that you're doing and what would be the most strategic. It could be getting our advice on communication or using technology. Our staff has quite a bit of experience, over 100 years, if you combine it all. Some of us who are older have decades of experience that we can share with you because we've all worked in nonprofits for a long time. In addition to that capacity building, we also do a lot of networking and bringing groups together, helping to foster more collaborative efforts around the region. And along with that, we really try to push for policies at the local, the state, provincial, and federal level that can make a difference in the long term. And with those changes, we really want to make sure that they reflect what's needed at the community level. So we really work with our peers and partners who are getting these policies adopted to make sure that those policies reflect what's needed at the community level, which all of you know best. We have staff all over the place, and last week we did a webinar. We have a really nice map that shows where the staff is that Alexis made. So hopefully she'll be putting that up on our website soon. So if you want to see where some of our staff are, we're located all around the region. So you can always feel free to reach out to who might be closest to you. So let's talk a little bit more about our grant programs. So we have over the last, we formed in 1996, and so since that time we have given out $4.5 million in grants. That's almost 1,200 projects. Those projects have protected thousands of acres of wetlands. They've helped to restore miles of streams. They've protected groundwater sources for dozens of communities and protecting their drinking water source, or even if it's finding contamination that then ultimately leads to helping people protect their drinking water. We've helped groups remove tons of sediments and engage hundreds of thousands of residents in protecting their own waters. So the grant opportunities that Freshwater Future has available are, we have project grants, and there's usually 2 cycles a year. There's usually a fall deadline, which is one we're going to talk about the most today, which would be September 30th this year. The next deadline after that would be spring, March 31st of 2021. Sometimes we'll adjust the timeline on whether it's going to be the 31st or the 30th if there's a weekend, but not always. It's usually midnight. You can email the application. It's pretty simple. We'll get into that later. We also have special opportunity grants, and I'll talk more about those, consulting grants and Great Lakes Network grants. So I'm going to actually start at the bottom. We're going to talk a little bit more about Great Lakes Network grants first. So the Great Lakes Network, if you haven't heard about it, is it's really a network that is it is a binational network, and the idea is to really foster collaboration, both short-term and long-term. So the idea is to provide a platform where people can quickly find potential partners and collaborators on projects that might go beyond their local area. It includes, groups that are working on both local community policies as well as state and provincial and federal or binational. They have calls every other month, so you can kind of learn what's going on. It's usually updates on some of the sub-networks. Currently right now, there's quite a few different sub-networks, so groups that are working on these different issues. Ecosystem transformation, they have educating Canadian Great Lake decision makers, fish health, fracking, Great Lakes Protection Act Alliance, which is a Canadian law, Lake Erie Campaign, Lake Simcoe Subnetwork, Mining Watch. There's a group that's focused on safe, clean, affordable drinking water, a group working on sewage spills, toxins, water infrastructure, and watershed management. It's pretty easy to join. There's no fee. The network isn't owned by Freshwater Future. We just help to coordinate it. So we have some funding to just, provide the platform. Our staff member, Christy Meyer, is the one that is the lead on this. So if you want to know more about it, you can contact Christy. And the grants for the Great Lakes Network are up to $5,000. There is a rolling deadline. And the idea is to really foster collaborative work. So if there is a policy that would be beneficial and it would, you need to work on it with many other partners, then that's the type of thing that these grants are available for. I'm gonna kind of switch, and I wanna show you that website really quickly. So I'm gonna just switch my screen a little bit here. Oh, I guess I want to go back actually. I guess I'm too high of a, I'll show you the website later. So you can just go to greatlakesnetwork.org. You can learn a little bit more about it. You do have to apply to be a member of the Great Lakes Network, but it's not a, a tough application to get through. We just want to make sure that people who support the same values about really wanting to protect the lakes, so that we don't get people who have different things in mind. So let's talk a little bit, before I go on though, let's see, does anyone have any questions?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, sounds good. Okay, I'll just keep going then. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the other Freshwater Future grants. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the project grants and our special opportunity grants and the consulting. So there are some requirements for some of those grants in order to be eligible for that. And one, you have to be a grassroots organization. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. The work that you're doing needs to have some kind of a water focus. It needs to be something to try to keep people safe with safe drinking water or protecting water, but some kind of water focus is important. You do need to be a current member organization of Freshwater Future, and there is a fee for that. It's $100 for organizations that are grassroots size. So we know that might be a stretch for some, and if it is, please let us know. But we raise all the money that we then give away in grants. So by being a member, it helps us with our funders. It helps us be able to raise more money so that we can then make sure that funds are available for groups like yours. If your Great Lakes Network grants do not require a Freshwater Future membership, just to make sure you know that. Past grant reports submitted. So if you've gotten past grants from us, we do like to make sure that the projects have been reported on. If you're having any difficulty with that, please let us know. We like to be supportive of our grantees. We do ask that you're a U.S. nonprofit or a Canadian charity. If you aren't either of those, you can still apply for a grant if you have a fiscal sponsor. So you just need to have an organization that is a nonprofit or a Canadian charity who will accept the money on your behalf, and then they would agree to give the money to you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what grassroots means. We're really looking for groups that have limited funds. They mostly rely on volunteers, or they have a relatively smaller staff. Their budget is usually under $200,000. You may have a community focus, so you might have a larger geographic area. That doesn't really matter too much, but we're looking for smaller groups when we think of grassroots. So this is the one that trips up a lot of people. Our project grants and special opportunity grants in particular are really focused on advocacy. And so advocacy, it's not the typical education work you might be doing with some of the environmental work. So the idea is, when you're an advocate, it's trying to get more public support for some type of a cause or a policy. And that's really what we're trying to get at. This is something that not a lot of funders will fund. So we like to try to keep this niche open to people who might be actually trying to hold a corporation accountable. Maybe it's through a permitting process. So making sure that they go through the steps of a permitting process, that you get public engagement on that process, that you have technical information to make sure that whatever's being proposed won't harm water resources or drinking water. So we really try to encourage groups to go beyond just the education or stewardship. So it's really trying to make sure that you're either trying to influence elected officials, influence decision makers, influence corporate owners to take steps that will make a difference and protect waters, whether it's in a policy or some type of other decision. And I know this can be tricky. So this is one of those areas where if you're not sure, this is where I want to make sure people feel really comfortable just calling us and saying, okay, these are our project ideas. Are any of these advocacy? And we'll do our best to try to guide you and push you to try to make it as best of a proposal as possible. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the special opportunity grants, the consulting and coaching. So special opportunity grants are grants worth $500, and there's no deadline for those. And we consider these kind of emergency grants. So let's say you find out that there's an activity proposed in your community that might cause some pollution. You want to get people engaged in going to the meeting, even if it's an online meeting now. You want to have people make comments, but it's coming, the comment period's 30 days, or you want to try to extend the comment period. This would be something you could apply to us. It's a really simple application. You write us a short letter that says, you know, what you want to do, what you'll use the money for, and the timeline for it. And then these, we have a set amount of money put aside. And if that money's available, then we can, you know, we'll evaluate your ask. And then if it makes sense, we'll go ahead and process that right away. That's a great opportunity for at least a little bit of money to respond to things that may not meet our fall and spring deadlines. As far as our consulting and coaching grants, these are grants that provide for Freshwater Futures staff to provide you with capacity building assistance. So it might be for helping you set up your 501c3 status, or it might be helping you do a strategic plan or a fundraising plan, or some communications on an issue. So you can apply for grant funds that will cover our staff time. It will cover 75% of the cost. We ask for a little bit of a cost share just so people are engaged and participatory, and that can be really helpful. So it's up to usually 40 hours. This year we've given away a lot of those for COVID relief work that we've been doing, but there is some funding still available. So please, if you're interested in that, I'm happy to tell you more about that at the end. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the project grants. So the project grant application is available online. I didn't pull it up here yet, but we can. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the projects that we have funded in the past. And so this will hopefully give you some examples of what that advocacy work really means. So it's projects that result in ongoing or positive permanent change to restore or improve water resources, including drinking water. It could be watchdogging and participating in the development, implementation, and enforcement of local, state, provincial, and federal aquatic habitat laws. So it doesn't have to just be aquatic habitat. It can also be just water laws. So it could be a law that's Safe Drinking Water Act, or a state law for a certain drinking water requirement, or something, you know, mining activities. So these are all things that, you know, in order to make sure that those activities don't hurt our water resources, require somebody, you know, keeping an eye on them. You can do nonpartisan voter education, voter registration and candidate forums. You can create opportunities to strengthen citizen involvement. So getting people engaged in protecting and restoring, and it might be actually protecting and restoring and responding to these activities, or trying to get decision makers to make better decisions. So I really wanted to go to our website to show you a couple of things. Let's see if I can figure this out, and if not, Alexis can help me, hopefully. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah, Alexis has the website up. So I'm going to have, Alexis, would you go to, would you go to our website for a second?
Sure. I have the Great Lakes Network and our website up. So you tell me.
Okay, great. Well, let's do Great Lakes Network website just real quickly,
Sure.
since you were able to do it for me. Good thing I have you on here with me.
No worries.
So on this website, it's really great because it has a handbook that kind of goes through the whole purpose of it and how some of the collaboration is supposed to work. It has the membership form. I think Christy's information is on there as well. So if you're interested in any of those kind of topics that I had mentioned, you know, I encourage you to go there and check it out. This is definitely a network that is owned by the network members. So it isn't Freshwater Future. It is all the people who are a part of it. And I think there's a lot to be gained from participating. And there's, groups that are working at the community level as well as at state and federal levels. Okay, so can you go to our website then, Alexis? Okay, great, thanks. So this is our website. It's pretty easy to get to, freshwaterfuture.org. If you go to grants at the top there, and you click first on Freshwater Future Grants Program, first one. So this is going to go over some of the stuff I'm already talking about right now. So, if you want to go and read it instead of, listening to all the rest I have to say, you can go back here or say, oh, I can't really remember what she said about this. A lot of it will be here. So feel free, if you were a reader, to go there. Let's go to the second tab on there. I wanted to talk a little bit about past grants we've funded, because this is a really, so if you could go to the map that you have, we have a map that will show, or actually here's a listing. We can stay there, Alexis. So the listing will show our past grant recipients. So if you click on 2018, it's going to have what we funded for all those different types of grants. So if you want to see what type of projects are getting funded, this is a great way to do it, because it gives you an idea of what organizations have gotten money and what they've gotten money for. So I think this is a really helpful way. So we click on like one of those, spring or fall. Now, you will probably recognize that with anything, there's always themes. Like every year, there's a kind of a, we'll get a whole bunch of applications for, certain types of projects. So sometimes when you're looking at these, you might see that there's a cluster, it seems like. And sometimes that's just because that's what's happening in the world. But we have, in this last 2018, so a couple of years ago, helping a group work on bringing people together. We had somebody who was working on gender and toxics. We had somebody working on the permitting process for the Nestle plant in Michigan. We had somebody in Canada doing some habitat studies, so to try to protect a rare turtle. So a real variety of activities. So the other thing to really help you get an idea of what we've funded in the past is actually a map that we have. Can you go to the map, Alexis? So this is a map. Alexis has been helping to update it lately. So we're trying to get all our most recent grants on here, but you can actually scroll in on this map. The different colors, dots, represent different types of grants that we've given. If an organization has received more than one, you can click on that dot and it will tell you what we have funded them for. So like here's one, Concerned Citizens of Michipicoten Bay. They were fighting a gravel mining project. This is a good example, actually. We gave them 6 grants over several years. It's also a good example because they didn't win. But that doesn't mean they weren't successful, right? They were still very successful at bringing their community together to influence how that gravel mine was going to go in at the mining activity, how it might reduce the impact to Lake Superior. So even if you don't win the issue that you're fighting, that work is still really important. And we know that you don't win every battle, but we're still here to support you. So those 2 tools will really help you to get an idea of some of the projects that we have funded. You can also, I just want to make sure people know, you can call us. We'll talk. So feel free to call us. Okay, thanks, Alexis. That was great.
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to go back then to this slideshow. I guess I can go right to here, can I? I do it right. Okay. So I would like to talk a little bit about types of projects we do not fund, because there are some limitations. So we won't fund governments, and this includes indigenous cultures as well. So if you are a First Nation or a tribal government, we cannot fund you. We can fund a group of citizens that, or residents of that indigenous culture, but not the government themselves. We can't fund lobbying activities. And lobbying, it's important to understand what lobbying really is. So if you're unclear, this is another area you can call us. We'll do our best to determine whether what you want to do is lobbying or not. But if there is a specific piece of legislation that you want adopted, it has a number, it has a name, that's usually what we consider lobbying. Now, I know I've been talking a lot about trying to get policies adopted, but there's a lot of work that takes to get policies adopted that doesn't include the actual lobbying. It might be developing the language. It might be doing research to support the adoption of that. It might be educating those decision makers about the importance of it. All of those things are not lobbying. It's only lobbying when you contact a legislator and you say, I want you to vote in favor of this, or you want people to vote in favor of this specific thing. And we have Jill's an attorney, so she can answer those questions in even more detail. So if you have questions about that, let us know. If a project's already been completed, we usually don't fund that. So we're looking forward to projects that have not been done yet. And then we usually won't fund consulting activities since we like to do that with our groups ourselves. So if you want assistance with those type of activities, you should consider a coaching and consulting grant. Okay, so a little bit more about the fall process. So one of the first steps really is to call us. So if you have a project idea, we really like folks to call us and share what you're thinking, and we can let you know if that is going to be a competitive project or not. This is our staff here. Most of us are pretty current there, so we're a pretty easygoing group. We are pretty approachable. We are all busy too, just like all of you are, but don't hesitate to reach out. We write a lot of grant applications ourselves. We know how much work it takes. We don't like it when we don't get a grant. So we want to make that process easier for you as well. The deadline is September 30th. So just to kind of keep that in your head, when we get the application, so the application is online. It should be pretty easy to download. It's just in a Word format. We ask people to fill it out in a Word format. If you need to put it into Google Docs that way and send it, that's great. We then take all of our applications that we receive, and as long as they're eligible, so that means, you know, the grassroots organizations, your membership's paid, you don't have outstanding grant reports, then what we do is we have grant readers that help us evaluate the projects. And these are usually past grantees, so past grant recipients that help us determine, based on that group of applications, what are the most important ones to fund. So it's not just our staff making that decision. Then once they come back, we do kind of review, make sure everything is as needed, and then we make the final decisions and we let people know usually by the end of November, early December is usually when we know, and we try to get grant contracts out, and then the money is available January 1st. So it takes a little bit of time to get these to turn around for this type of grant process. Okay, just a few really quick things, and then I'm just going to open it up for questions. There's a few guidelines that some of our past coworkers have helped develop for groups as they're starting to consider, like as you consider your application, what's the water related problem you're addressing? Who are the decision makers that can make a change in addressing the problem? And are you going to be connecting with those decision makers? Is there another strategic level or a strategic way to get to those decision makers? What are the tools and information you need to provide them? And if you're not sure, like let's say you just know this is the problem and you're not really sure what you want to do about it yet, you feel free to call us. Not that you'll want our ideas, but we could at least, maybe ask you more questions so you could then determine what you think is going to be best based on your community and what the needs are. Just a little bit more about our membership benefits, and then I'll open it up for questions. I mentioned earlier that, we raise all the money that we then give away in our grants program. And, one of the reasons we do that is because we know it's the work at the community level that really makes a difference. But we have been doing this for quite a while. And, one of the things we really like about having our groups be members is not only does that help us show our funders that the members are invested in the work we're doing, it also gives us a chance to build more networks so people can, learn from their peers in other areas. So they can, we're working a lot on lead issues and helping communities working on addressing lead in their drinking water. So, the residents in Benton Harbor can then talk to the residents in Flint, who can talk to the residents in Detroit and then in Toledo and Chicago. And how are they getting their water tested quickly enough to make sure and getting filters out to people. So it's really helping to build those networks around those issues. And it's those community level solutions that we need to figure out how to put into policies at state and federal levels too. So that's one of the things that we really are able to learn by having all of you be a part of our organization. And in addition to that, as a member, you can also, if you have an action or a policy that you want to get more sign-ons for, whether organizations or individuals, we will send that out to our list as well. So we do try to open it up so that we can help our member groups make progress on their issues that are important to them. So I'm going to actually stop now and see if anyone has any questions about it, any of the questions. And if you aren't unmuted and you need me to unmute you, let me know.
We have 2 questions in the Q&A box. And
oh, great. Okay. Can you combine grants? Yeah, I mean, you can a little bit. I think one of the ways people have combined grants in the past is, using our consulting services along with one of their, with a project grant. That's pretty common, for sure. So those would be the 2 that I think are the most likely to be combined. Yeah, so really annual revenue for organizations to qualify for our Freshwater Future grants is $200,000 or less. If you are bigger than that, you might be eligible for the Great Lakes Network grants, but you'd have to be a member of that first. Does that answer your question, Amber? Our consulting services are available to groups that have larger budgets, though.
she said yes.
All right. I see that. Thanks, Alexis. Okay. Any other questions people have?
What is your average annual grant?
It used to, we just raised it up to 5,000. So it used to be just 3,500. But I would say now the project grants, they still range between 3 and 5. So, it's a small amount, but we hope that it will help you leverage more money. And we're always happy to give you ideas of where else you can apply to.
Is there log or record of the transformation in communities as a result of the advocacy that Freshwater Future has funded?
That's a great question. I don't know if we have a log of it. We probably should, Joanne, but we probably have some examples. I think, I'm always thinking current of where we're at right now. But I do think there's progress being made right now on water affordability in the region as a result of some of the grants that we've been able to give away to groups and some of the work that we've been doing as well. So is that kind of what you're interested in?
Well, actually, I'm a community activist as well as a social justice advocate of some decades. And because I have access to a media program, I was wondering if we might be able to maximize the advocacy work using grassroots local media, paper, and et cetera. So that's in order to organize with groups who don't necessarily see themselves as advocates, but to transform them, help reframe the paradigm for who's an activist, who's an advocate. And I know that media can help mold decision makers and also be a catalyst for social change.
Yeah, it really can. I think that's a great idea. I think we could talk about that with you afterwards if you wanted. But I do think that's
sure.
that would be great. Yeah, we'd love to pull you into some of the network stuff that we're already doing.
Sure.
That sounds great. Is there another